Hey there, Brandon here, and welcome to another episode of Stack and Scale. And this week we're back with another awesome workflow. We're going to walk you through, we, as in me and Jon Russo, that is. And real quick, Jon Russo is a great dude. He is the founder and CMO over at B2B Fusion. And I've known Jon for I think 10 years actually at this point. He was one of our best partners when I was at Engagio and over at Demandbase as well. And they've got an incredible organization over there. And I always knew that whenever I sent one of our customers over to Jon, he would take care of them really well. So I recently reconnected with Jon actually because he was teaching one of the AI courses over at Pavilion. And he was showing Pavilion how he was actually using Claude Cowork for some of his workflows. And I said, I got to get this guy on the show. It was great to reconnect with him after a few years. And him and I still see each other at conferences. But I said, hey, Jon, come on to the show. Let's build something cool together for the audience. So what we ended up building was how to use Claude Cowork for better cadences. So we're not talking about spray and pray. We're talking about more highly curated, highly personalized, and relevant cadences. So if you know me, obviously, I know a little bit about ABM, and Jon knows quite a bit about ABM too. So this is more of a personalized one-to-one type of ABM use case for your cadences. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Let's dive right in with Jon. Jon, welcome to the show.
Brandon, thanks for having me. I can't wait to dive in.
Heck yeah. Okay, well, what are we going to be walking everyone through today?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Claude Cowork. There's a lot of hype around it, but more specifically, the go-to-market element of Claude Cowork on why most cadences fail as a use case. We're going to dig into that.
Perfect. I love it. Okay, so tell me, where should we begin?
Yeah, so let's assume for a second that you're targeting some strategic accounts and you know who you're targeting. So let's say, for example, there's 10 strategic accounts that we're going to target. I'm going to talk about some of the elements that go behind it. But before I do that, just to tee things up, in engagements, because I'm at the intersection of strategy and systems and engagements that we see, and even as a practitioner when I was a CMO, I'd commonly see these issues of generic messages hitting strategic accounts, cadences that didn't necessarily tie to any of the artifacts, meaning my messaging document, objection document. They were almost developed in a vacuum and very individualized by SDR. And I even had SDRs on my team when that was having the individualized. So, and the personas vary. When you're in a strategic account, the buying committee is so large, got to really think through, that aspect. So we're going to dive into the how-to of not just creating a cadence, like any LLM can do that. What makes Cowork different is how it synthesizes data. And that's what we're going to get into, Brandon.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. And I always said the magic formula for outbound and ABM is personalization, relevance, and timeliness. And it's easier today than ever before to have all of those elements in your campaign. So there's no excuses for people for, that generic messaging or not timely, relevant messages. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we're going to share the architecture in a second, but just kind of leading up to this, these are the building blocks. Now, a lot of companies, this isn't just theoretical. A lot of companies these days are recording calls on Gong or Otter, product usage data. It's likely that there's some work that has been done in the company on your competitors, maybe in battle cards. Perhaps on the sales side, you have an objection library. You have past cadence examples. The problem is each one of these lives in a silo.
Yeah.
And when you're reaching out to strategic accounts, first of all, you only have one shot at doing it and doing it really well. So it's not like there are other technologies that can do the spam cannon and reach transactionally. This is exceptional. And you and I both have an ABM background. This is exceptional at kind of synthesizing these kind of silos into something that is coherent and can be presentable to a strategic account, which is really important.
Yeah, Cowork. I've been super impressed with Cowork and Claude Code at its ability to do that. But yeah, specifically Cowork.
Yeah, and so whether you have these assets or not, the other option here is you can use Claude Cowork to build these assets for you. So, for example, you could take a number of transcripts and analyze your personas and ask persona questions about roles and pain points, and that type of thing. Same thing with messaging. You could do the same thing if you had transcripts. You could analyze what messaging's resonated or what's not resonating. You could also ask in the transcripts, who are my competitors relative to my solution?
Yep.
So all of this stuff can be, built out.
So there's
Um,
no excuses at all anymore. It's done, John.
well, one of time, and that's the
Yeah, that's
biggest
right.
challenge. But yeah, you're right. There really is not with today's technology. You should be able to kind of pull this together. So
Exactly.
um, let me dive into kind of what it looks like, and then there's a number of ways that you can kind of skin the cat here. So those same assets that we were talking about, Brandon, here on the left hand side, those can be represented in a couple different ways. I will show you my folder structure that's on my hard drive that reflects this setup. So on my hard drive, I've got not only the folder structure, but I've got files for each of these on dummy data. And we'll explain the dummy data scenario in a moment. But it takes all this information. And for today's purpose, we're only going to use one account just because it's easier to test on a single account. And we're also going to use Clay, which you've generously created a Clay table. We can talk about that as part of an input. And then the output will be these three cadences, three structured cadence for a brand new account in a competitive environment. But let me pause there on the architecture, Brandon, and see what questions you have here.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I like, and I do think the sharing your folder structure is going to be helpful too for people who are not really familiar with maybe how to set that up. And the thing that I really like about that too is you can go back and forth between Claude Cowork and Claude Code. So if I had someone ask me that the other day, and I was like, actually, I'm not sure. Let me find out. And yeah, it turns out if you initially started with Cowork or Claude Code, either way. But even if it's Cowork, and it'll create your Cloud.md files, and as long as those files are all set up properly, it can pretty much you can bounce back between the two.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I'm not as sharp on anything code wise, but I use Cowork and Chat, Claude Chat.
On the
So
chat.
another option would be you could dump all of these files into projects on the chat
Yes.
side and reference them back into Claude Cowork. There's so many different ways of architecting. It'll still come up with the same result, but the benefit of that is you might have a dedicated project per target account. So if you only have, again, if you're strategic, you're focusing on very limited number of accounts, you can track the history of what's going on in those accounts. That might be another way of potentially doing it as well.
Yep. Exactly.
And let me show you the folder structure here. Just bear with me and I'll
Cool.
share the screen again. So this is the actual folder structure. You can see that all the subfolders I have: competitive positioning. I've got a messaging framework, objection library, past cadences. Then I define the personas. I
Yeah.
actually went out and built all these personas, and you'll see some other assets here because it's the actual example that we ran a couple examples through this. And the hypothetical, I guess we can kind of jump into this, is
Yep.
you and I are familiar with the ABX ABM space. So I pretended that we were a competitor to a 6sense or demand base. We both have common lineage there. And really taking a new technology and bringing it into a fast growing enterprise. So I battle tested a couple of those scenarios, and we'll dive into that in a moment. But this is the structure, and Cowork. You can point Cowork. So let me bring up Cowork so you can see it here.
Yes. Okay.
So you can point Cowork toward. This is different. Oops. You can point Cowork toward different files as part of the connection. So I could point it to the master folder and it will read all those. Or you can attach it to the project. So you can tie it to very specific projects that you might be doing on the Claude chat side of things.
Yep.
So you got a couple options as part of that. One option that we should talk about, though, since you generously created the Clay table,
Yep.
there's a couple different ways that we can access contact data. Do you want to start with the Clay side, and then I can show what it looks like in the Cowork, or
Yes.
do you want me to flip it around? How do you want to navigate that?
No, that sounds good. I'll share my Clay real quick. Okay, so to get your this is we're looking at specifically people here. And you might start off with maybe an account, and you need to say, hey, I need to find the CMO at the account, which would be a different Clay table here. Actually, yeah, why don't I show that one real quick too? So you can start off with, you put the company URL in, and then it enriches. And then here, all you're doing is you're saying, find people. Oops, you're saying find people at that company with these titles, and you can get pretty detailed with this. If everyone, I've done a few other tables around this, so I won't dive too deep into this. But then from here, we are enriching the person, finding their email, and then we're putting it into a document. So I just connected with the Google Docs Clay integration, and then you can see this document here. Whoops. We can see this. Should just open. Okay, here, I'll just open this. Okay, there we go. You can see here, and then now you can feed this directly over into Cowork. We'll show that in just a sec. So if you start with people, you can build out something like this, or sorry, if you start out with companies, you can just build something like that. Or if you have the person and you know who you want to go after, you just need to enrich them a little bit. It'd be something more like this. Our buddy Stephen Brody here, enriched him, pulled in all the data, found his work email, and then again, we're just pulling that right into a Google Doc, which we are going to point Cowork at. So relatively quick and easy. And then, yeah, Jon, I'll stop sharing. Then you can kind of share maybe a different way to do it, and we can talk about some of the differences with doing it through Cowork.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I loved, I think it's a killer combination of Clay and Cowork. It's almost the new ABM, quite frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an incredible. So our example that we're going to walk through today is a company called Glean. Glean is growing rapid fire right now. Their head of commercial sales on the enterprise side and also runs the SDRs is Stephen Browdy. You probably know Stephen from MuleSoft. He was the head of inside sales there, had a very successful run as it got acquired by Salesforce. But now his company is growing by leaps and bounds. So I used, Brandon, I used the Clay connector here to, so there's a configuration here. I'll just show you very briefly. There's connectors that you can connect a number of different technologies, and then you could see the ones that I've got connected here. I connected Clay. I won't go through that actual connection. But,
yeah, pretty quick and easy to do those connections.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, you go back and forth to authenticate. Now, the interesting thing is, for me, if I were a little risk averse in terms of my credits, financially, I could put the power of this into the hands of the SDR to pull the information from Clay. And what that means is they're not doing swivel chairs. They're not going from screen to screen to screen to pull together these cadences. So in this case, I said, hey, just tell me about Stephen Browdy, CRO of Glean. So while you were creating your table and having to know and how to move things around,
Yeah,
I
a
just
little bit
asked
more
Cowork.
technical.
Yeah, exactly. I just asked a very high level question. Now you can see my information here is a little bit more limited, I think, than what you're able to pull out of Clay, though, directly. I don't know if you want to dig into that at all.
Yeah, with Clay, there's so much power, but again, the trade-off is knowing how to do it, knowing how to set it up. So you could do some of the stuff that we're going to walk through right now in Clay itself. The other limiting factor is, like you kind of mentioned, the credits itself. So if you're using, depending on which model and which integration or how complex you want to get, you can run up your credits pretty quick on Clay. So sure, if you wanted to do competitive intelligence and ask a specific thing, have ClayGen go out there, do the research using the latest models. Opus 4.6 is going to cost you more, obviously, than some of the like you can have complete control over like which model you're using and how it's doing it and when it's doing it. But again, a lot more technical knowledge, and I would never expect an SDR to know that. And then two, you're using a lot more credits. So that's what I love about this Cowork option. SDRs can easily go in to a chat interface like this and say, here's the person, find me the data that I need, and then work through what you're going to show now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we're talking about Clay and the person level information, that information is being pulled here. Now, we could do a whole separate session on prioritizing accounts. We're going to assume we've already been through that with signals and matching your ICP. We've already identified Glean as one of the companies we really want to go after in a net new sale to introduce an ABX-like technology that works maybe in conjunction with their tech stack. So you'll see here, it says target account list. We've already identified one company in that target account list. The Clay tables, whether you pull it directly from Cowork or use Brandon's and point to it, that's the same way. And you're basically making a stew here. You're throwing it all into Claude Cowork and just asking it questions around, okay, based on all this information, come up with a 3-person cadence. And let me show you what that looks like here. So here's the workflow. We've identified the account, we've identified the persona, and we now have some signals that came with it. And within the signals, it came out to say that Glean is growing so rapidly, their headcount has doubled in a short amount of time. They're using tech stack according to the code that's on their website, Tech Target, Qualified Marketo. So it's synthesizing this information to come up with the right cadence. So we asked it to come up with a 3 level cadence and in following our guidelines. So I provided it guidelines of things that we've seen in other enterprise clients and other enterprise outreach. I don't remember the exact number, but let's say it's less than 100 words. And the first email was a pattern interrupt. And what we're really seeing Claude Cowork do is these areas here. So name their existing stack, talk about something that's relevant to the persona, somehow weave in the competitive scenario. And I also put in, and Brandon, I think you're probably a fan of hers too. Kathleen Booth a couple weeks ago
yeah, of course.
had she had this anti-AI discipline where she had this document that said, I don't want it to sound like a machine. So remove the M dashes or the fragments or the fillers. So it references that document too. It's all in the stew, and out comes, assuming that I'm selling this technology into Stephen, out comes an email. Now, granted, any LLM can pull this together, but this really gets to a very personalized way of doing things for strategic accounts. If I were doing something that was not strategic, Clay might be a better fit, quite frankly, than Claude Cowork if I were doing a transactional sale where, we were talking to Josh Carter as an example in one of his classes, and a Pavilion membership, for those that are not familiar, they're individuals across the globe. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that you're reaching out to. Clay in its own right has the ability to do those cadences.
Yeah, set up for volume and scale.
Yeah. So could you use Cowork to do that? Yeah, you could, but I'm not sure I would. I think I would use it more on the strategic side of things.
Totally agree.
So, and these are the other cadences. I don't know if we want to spend a ton of time, but it just immediately pipes these out. The other thing like all AI, Brandon, is you'd want to have a human in the loop. So
Exactly. Yeah.
this tees it up really well for maybe an SDR or a senior AE. So that senior AE can spend time doing other things. Hopefully, your marketing department or somebody is pulling all the assets together. So your selling arm isn't having to spend their time kind of stitching all this
Yeah.
information together.
Exactly. Okay. So getting these emails here from what Clay gave us in Cowork. Now, do you say, all right, great, look at this document and then put together an email that is focused on this for one, this for two, this for three, to walk us through how you
Yeah,
end
good question. Let me pull up my Claude and I'll show you the actual prompt here. Just bear with me on the share here. So in this case, I had to go through some iterations, which you'll see. And by the way, for most cowork, I'm finding that you ask it a question, you don't quite get the results you want, and you
Yeah.
have to ask it a follow-on question. So let's scroll all the way up to the top when I was working on this originally, and this is actually picking up. So this is another interesting thing. Cowork, in my experience, Brandon, is not enterprise grade software. I had it crash this weekend. I had to re-architect
Yeah.
my entire cowork. I'm going to be doing a separate class on that re-architecture. Um, but now I've got backed up work. So when it times out, which it frequently does, or crashes, I have the ability to now reference my prior work and pick up where I left off. So you can see that as part of my prompt. I'm like, I want you to
Mm,
pick up where I previously left off. And and you can also see I ask negative prompts like, what other documents should I be adding to make this a more complete analysis, or what am I not thinking about? And so it goes through its analysis um, and says, "Hey, you've built out the personas and you've done this great structure blueprint. Like, kind of give me a pat on the back. But here are the things that are missing." And then I'll give you like 19
mhm.
things.
Yep.
In which case I picked like 2 out of the 19, or I picked 1. Let's do a competitive positioning
There you
document.
go. Yeah.
Um, so, so just fast forwarding, make a first pass. Um, okay, then if that's saved on the drive, let's move to the next gap. Okay, so I did 2. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling all the way down here. Um, and then I pretended I was this other enterprise selling into Glean. What information do I need to be part of that? And um, and then I started asking it hypothetical questions. If I tell you to do the search on Glean, could you do it? This is kind of taking things off the rails a little bit, but it helped me kind of figure out like what was happening. It identified 2 Gleans, so I had to
Uh,
clarify that, eventually with, Steven. But if you work out the kinks over time,
yeah.
this will get better and better. It's just like anything that's technical, you have to kinda work it, right? Like, you and I have been in MarTech for a while. You never get it right out of the jump. You have to practice it a few times.
Yeah,
So
and
and
then you
then
clean
here.
up your process, and then the process will run hopefully pretty smoothly by the third, fourth
E
time.
exactly, and you can see, okay, here's it comes up with the cadence after my questions, answers, and then I say, "Hey, I added a new document on messaging, can you rerun the analysis?"
Oh, there you go.
So it reruns the analysis, scrolling back down, then I said, "Rewrite the cadence," so it's rewriting the cadence, um, and, it goes through and then it spits out again, and then I'm like, "Wait a second, these emails that you gave me are incredibly long, and they're not following the Kathleen Booth document that I asked for. Like, how can we improve this?" So we went
Mhm.
back and we did it again. And so, I gave it that instructions, and then it picked up and created kind of the new cadence. And that's what you're seeing in the PowerPoint now.
Yeah,
Um,
those look good.
so
Those look
yeah,
good.
it's a bit of back and forth, and probably a lot more for your audience than, you know, it, there's a smoother way of getting from point A to point B. It's just like anything, though. You got to practice it.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Can Cowork actually send the like if you connect it to your Gmail?
Yeah,
Could it
great question. As of this recording, you can draft an email into Google
oh, like your
Drafts.
draft folders?
It
Oh,
won't
okay.
send it.
It won't send it, okay.
Yeah, it won't send. But I think that's the difference with Clay too. Is you could probably get that. I think you said it with Clay. You can get it to your MTA,
Yes.
or you can send it somehow.
Yeah, yeah, if we wanted to, then, yeah, we could upload back into Clay, use Clay's either native sequencing tool, which again is just smartly white labeled, or Clay has the ability to push it to Outreach, Gong Engage, Salesloft, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful
and
ways.
that would be very powerful. Again, I kind of look at that of, okay, you could almost remove the human in the middle on that,
Yeah.
and that to me feels a little bit more transactional than the
Yep.
strategic side.
Totally
Um,
agreed.
but could be technically done, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome,
So
John. Well, this was great. Are you ready for the lightning round?
oh, yeah, I'm bracing myself.
Cool. Yeah, I always have trouble with the lightning round because it's never lightning. But I try because I always want to ask like follow-up questions and like dig in a little bit more. But that wouldn't be lightning round. So semi-lightning round. We'll see. Okay, what is your current AI tech stack?
Ooh, I'm deep on a lot. So we built our whole business off of Google. So I've got a Pixel 9 phone here. It came out,
Mm,
I don't know, about 2 years ago. I was a very early adopter of that. So I'm across the board on every AI tool under the sun, I think, right now.
mm.
I was not a big Claude user 8 weeks ago. If you had asked me that same question, since that time, I almost 90% of my time has been on Claude, and everything else has fallen by the wayside. I still have ChatGPT. I still use Gemini, Otter, Perplexity.
Yep.
Those are probably the common denominators. Um, but everything's now turned to Claude with this capability because I can kind of see the value of it and
Yeah, I mean,
mastering it.
with their MCPs and their plugins, like I used to have to jump over to Gemini, but to use Nano Banana, but now there's an MCP and a skill that I could just prompt Claude Code, and it's just like it calls and it does everything for me. And
Yes.
when it gives me the image, it doesn't have the little Gemini logo at the bottom right.
Oh, even bonus. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. It's a big bonus
hysterical.
for me. Is yeah, no Gemini logo.
Well, just like the Clay example too, you don't have to leave the interface. Like you could do everything really within Cowork now. So
Exactly.
it's so powerful, but it's not enterprise grade. And but anyway, lightning round question. I'm dabbling in a lot of different ones, but right now I'm really concentrated on Claude.
Yeah, yeah, same here. Okay, where do you go to keep up with all the things that are happening in AI right now?
I think the feeling overall is people are overwhelmed with trying to
Yeah,
get and trying to
100%.
stay on top of things. And
Yeah,
I'm part of that crew of how do you stay on top. Um, and I also think that a lot of companies right now are at early stages of adoption. So there's
very
almost
much.
this disconnect of there's this huge amount of information trying to keep up on it, but in reality, the digestion of a company is much smaller than the hype that's going on right now.
100%.
But I think I'm just on YouTube a lot and just
Mm.
kind of scanning and
Any
I've done
favorite, like, creators?
Lenny's
Oh, yeah.
uh, newsletter's really good and Slack community and trying to think. Now with Cowork, there's been a lot of people I'd never heard of before
Hmm.
globally.
Mm,
So that's been interesting too to see. It's been like a global phenomenon. So I've been really tuned in to, I'd say YouTube overall.
most, yeah. Yeah, I've been watching a lot more YouTube videos myself too, for sure. Okay, last question. Where, what's your biggest challenge right now with AI?
Biggest challenge. Um, well, I think it goes back to that there's a lot of activity and very little adoption right now. And what I'd like to do is get my clients, aperture on the adoption. Like if I can help them with that, so they make fewer mistakes and get a quicker return on that investment, that's where I see the challenge is they're just the aperture's really, really tight right now because money's tight, headcount's tight.
Yeah.
But if we could open that up just a little bit, I believe we could actually save, especially with Cowork. There are business processes that Cowork can streamline to reduce either the MarTech cost or potentially, I hate to say it, headcount, but
That's
more
true.
so the MarTech cost.
Yeah.
There's reduction opportunities here if you push heavier on Cowork. I think we're a little early on that, but it's not too far down. It's not unrealistic, but that's my biggest challenge is trying to convince clients that they should be thinking that way.
There you go. All right, here's the actual last question. Where can people learn more about you, connect with you? See what you're
Great question. First of all, I'm grateful that you had me here, and just want to thank you again for involving me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But LinkedIn would probably be the best way to connect. You can either follow or reach out, reference this podcast, so I can go back to Brandon and say, "Hey, your podcast got me a bunch of invites here." So
There you go.
if you're listening this long, if we kept your interest,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Right.
so yeah.
Well, Jon, always a pleasure. Yeah, you and I have known each other for a long time, and yeah, I appreciate you and appreciate the friendship.
Grateful for the opportunity.
All right, thanks.